and strife and violence. And it was, I don't ever want to feel like that again. I was having some very unusual and off-colored thoughts, and I just would feel agitated and annoyed, and it was increasing. I even felt like screaming. It's crazy. Some of the things that I was having, like I would just be like, what if I just it's so weird. It's so weird. And I'm not that type of person. I'm a very low-key person, and it takes a lot to upset me. Okay, I'm not perfect, but I can take a lot. But the thoughts I was having, it just seemed like it was something trying to gain control of me, and it was coming more so from the anger, agitation kind of thing. I was getting quieter, and then it would just like things like little things that normally would not bother me, it's no big deal, was like really grating on me. And I'm like, this is not me. Something is happening. Now, another thing in this particular series, there's a lot going on. I said a lot of times with this particular young lady that was in the series, if we're going to talk from a spiritual point of view, from a spiritual lens, and especially spiritual warfare, I would say that another spirit that could easily be attached to this particular series is gluttony. And why I say that is because in this particular series, they would show this young lady, the main character, Dre, like gorging. It's like the violence and the food went together. I mean, she would just gorge herself, not just on just everyday food, like just, things that it was like junk, overly processed. I mean, like gorging to the point. I mean, like, I wondered how was she able to stay the size that she was, because it seemed like it went hand in hand. When I think about it now, it just seemed like she was just like all this violence and this rage that she had. She would go from like she seemed passive. She always seemed like kind of passive, kind of not exactly out of it, but like you just would see her. You wouldn't think by looking at her on the outside, but then she was capable of such violence and such rage, and it all had to do with people who didn't follow or said something. Following the storyline, would say something bad about this particular pop star, Naija. She was like this super fan, super obsessed and a super fan. And if she saw someone she stayed on social media, if she saw someone say something on social media against Naija, she went after these people and she actually ended them. I mean, like, that was the crazy part among many crazy parts about this particular series. But I feel like there is a spirit of strife and anger and violence and murder and gluttony, among other things that's attached to it. So what we're talking about is that there are things that we think that, we have to be vigilant. Okay, even myself, other people, and that's one of the fundamental things in the book, Territorial Spirits, and the related information that I found online is that Christians, believers, cannot be overconfident. And I read that, and I thought I understood that, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to watch the show. It's kind of off the wall. It's kind of wacky. It's kind of this. It's kind of that. And it actually was having some type of effect, and I wasn't making the connection, but I knew something was happening and it was getting worse, and it wasn't me. And I kept trying, like I said, explain it away. Another really odd thing that happened and made me feel some type of way was that I started to hear things, and that's another aspect to spiritual warfare. And in the past, when I've had issues that could be called spiritual warfare, they were spiritual warfare in further down the line. In the past, a lot of times you'd hear footsteps and you hear walking, and for me, in the past, I would hear footsteps or walking or moving around on the roof or on the ceiling. And that had started to happen. It hadn't happened in a long time. So when that happened, I was like, okay, this hasn't happened in a long time. Something really significant is happening here. And the mistake that I see that I've made is that even if something is not intentionally a horror film, like I said earlier, you steal the content, because there are all types of spirits with all types of vices, if you will, that are attached to things and to people and to places. And here we go again, just like when I was talking about concerts and stuff like that, I'm no exception. Okay, for me, evidently, it's movies. I have to be careful. Okay, I have to be careful. We all have to be careful with everything. But this particular, when I heard the walking and the moving and there's nobody visibly there, there's something wrong. And that's when you have to literally pump the brakes and say, okay, and you have to start praying and you start to getting into the word. And then once I started doing it, like just back to back, something's wrong. So you just praying to God, and reading the Bible and Bible-based literature, and just really immersing myself in it. It seemed to smooth things out. Makes sense, right? And it just like it went away. Now, when I talked to Miss Mary about it, she was like, yeah, I noticed something was going on with you. I noticed this, I noticed that. She says, watching you. She's like, didn't know what was going on. And she says, I asked, and when she got around to actually asking me, is there something going on? I said no, but by the time she actually asked me, it had passed. The situation had passed, thank God. And I just think about when I've talked about this before, when I look at things on the news and people do things, and you know the things I'm talking about, very things that have just definite, very permanent consequences. Is this how it started? Did it start with something this little? That's why I'm always just it is always in my mind. How did it begin? How did it start? Did it start out little? Did it start out when these people, they start hearing, like I'm going back to the whole mass shooting things. These people, they start hearing voices. These voices are telling them things. They're feeling things. I just remember how I felt. And this is just a show I just recently, within a week or two ago, watched. You think that's very going back to, it's not a game. Anything can be, it's not to scare people, but it is to kind of wake yourself up, to remind you, even if you think that you are in, you kind of think like I thought. I was overconfident. I'll watch this. It's no big deal. It's kind of out there, but it's okay. No, it's not okay. We have to all be very, very careful of what we take in. And there's a young man, I've spoken about him before. He said the same thing. We have to be very vigilant of what we take in through our eyes, through our ears, because as we know, the adversary is not playing games. Just like Jehovah God and Jesus are not playing games, the adversary isn't either. And he is very proficient. But with God's Holy Spirit and the tools that he has given us, we can stand and persevere and be victorious. You were just listening to Teachable Moments with April podcast. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. We invite you to stay connected with us on the other social media platforms of ours, which is TikTok, Pinterest, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube. Also, we'd like to invite you to check out our official podcast landing page on podpage.com/teachable moments with April to see all our content in one place and leave personal messages, feedback, and more.